You're listening to Permission to Shine, the podcast by Charisse Bisram. The Oxford Dictionary describes permission as the action of officially allowing someone to do a particular thing, consent, authorization. What if you were that someone and you gave yourself the permission to be everything you wanted to be and more? No more playing small and accepting less than. You are worthy of the life of your dreams, regardless of what it is that you've been through. And honestly, it's exactly what you've been through that has shaped you into the version of yourself that you are now. Like a diamond, you've endured so much, but instead of breaking, you have become stronger and brighter. And if that's not a reason to shine, then I don't know what is. And if nature can do it, then why the hell can't you? You are brave, you are strong, you are powerful, and you are enough. Hear my call and give yourself the permission to shine, because you don't realise how many people are inspired by your light. Like, share, follow, subscribe, and listen out for more. Stay tuned. Hi everyone, welcome to episode 3. This conversation today is with one of my best friends, Laura Belcher. She's a business mentor and a thought leader and all about female empowerment and female equality. She's doing some really incredible work, and funny enough, our journeys have ran quite parallel actually, although our life experiences have been very different. We've kind of found flow together, and we always call each other our soul sisters because, you know, we're always thinking about each other and then one rings or something like that. But yeah, the conversation today is very deep, very rich and very meaningful. So if you have the time to sit down quietly and have a listen, or if you're driving, whatever you're doing, it's going to be filled with real depth today. So just want to let you into that before we get started. Also, just to let you know, we are streaming Laura live in Australia, so there are a few little technical hiccups, but nothing to worry about. I hope you enjoy the episode. Hi, welcome back. We are on episode 3. I'm really excited about today because this is like one of my best friends, and I can't wait to share with you all of her knowledge. And like, we've been talking about this for years. Like, we probably, you know, I'd say maybe 2-3 years ago in the pandemic, we were speaking about the fact that someone needs to do a podcast so we could just talk about everything that we are and all these lovely things. So yeah, I'm really excited to introduce to you, as I said, one of my best friends, Laura Belcher. So hi, Laura.
Hi, mate. How lovely. It's so true, isn't it? It's just such a pleasure to kind of bring together what me and you have kind of gone through, I guess, to your listeners to help more women.
Absolutely that. So Laura, do you want to tell us about your business, what you do?
Yeah. So I'm a thought leader and business mentor for women. And it's a weird one, you know, because I feel like um being a business mentor is kind of um I feel like it's a new thing, but then it's kind of not a new thing at the same time. Do you know what I mean? So it's almost like, I think until I started having mentors, I didn't realize the value of them. And it's almost like I always describe this in terms of what I do and in terms of how I felt going through it. But it's almost like you get a degree that's for you. So if they could create a degree for Laura Belcher, like, I believe that's what a great mentor should give somebody. So it's like, yeah, so all of a sudden you're not looking at kind of a boxed format or a boxed course. It's like really pulling apart what somebody needs. And that's exactly what I do. And that's how I help and work with women, because I adore business. But more than that, I adore the evolution of women. And I adore the fact that, well, I'm very passionate about change for women. And the biggest thing I see that holds women back, especially in business, is it's not almost like the what and the how, which I think is what we all kind of want. It's like strategy and all those things. And they are important, but it's often the why. It's the why you're not doing the things to the what and the how, you know? So that's really what I kind of navigate. I always say to my clients, and they describe it back to me, it's like the river of vulnerability. So it's like the other side of where you're at is what you truly want. And then between it is just this frightening river, you know, and like a lot of people don't swim it because they just don't know if they could get to the other side. And my job is I sit in it and I can't swim it for anybody and I can't push you in, but I won't let you drown. So it's kind of like, that's the journey, really.
Yeah, absolutely. And do you know what the most amazing thing about you is? And obviously, being like one of your best mates, I can say this, and I know this is that you've swum the river, swum the river yourself. So that's why you're coming from that
Oh my
place
God, I
because you've
have.
done it.
I have.
That's
I
it, a
feel like I'm
million
still in
times
the big one
over.
at the
I know.
moment. Gosh. And then it never gets easier. But I think this is the thing. It's like, this is what I'd love to share with you guys listening. It's the same as you and watching your journey. It's like people think that the fear goes away, or people think it will just get easier, and courage and belief is just born. It's like harnessed. It's definitely harnessed. Do you know what I mean? Sorry, I don't know if we lost connection there.
Yeah, I think we lost a tiny bit there. Sorry, mate. Do you want to just repeat that last bit?
Yes. So I feel like this is a thing too, and watching your journey, and thank you for that. But I think it really is this thing also where when people watch other people do it, they just think they're born that way. They're born with courage. They're born with like motivation. They're born with no fear. But it isn't that. It's like a muscle. And it's only the more that you do it, you like start to build in your own tools and your own methods for you that will help you along the way every time. But the reason why I do it is because it's where true life is. It's where our truest self is, and it's where we feel like this abundance of fulfillment. We just feel like we're just effortlessly showing up with like peace into our integrity of who we are.
Absolutely that, mate. And, all of that I'm with you on as well, 100%. Because, like accumulating the tools, all of that, that's all my bag as well, mate. So, yeah, I completely, yeah, that's everything, isn't it? Is to a T. It's what needs to be in the world and what we need more of. So, the more people that are doing this, we're like, yes, we need that. So tell us about your life for people that don't know you, like your story, how you began, and then why the mentoring.
Well, it kind of began with, if I take you back to like small Laura, I was a very frustrated child, really. Like I've just been going over this stuff, Cherise, because as you know, I've just built a new website, and it's really interesting to dive back into like those things. But yeah, and even talking to my mum, like I was just a very frustrated child. Like I had, because I just used to feel that we were so limited. Like I have like really clear memories of being a teenager and just feeling like, why do adults make this so difficult? And why are they so limited? That's all I remember. I used to feel very frustrated. Like I used to see the world so in such a small way. I used to feel like we only limit ourselves. And again, I don't know if that's crazy or if that's just like, you know, courage, who knows. But basically I started kind of there, and more in a way that I was really like, I loved exploration. So even, like one of my school reports, this is in my bio I've just rewrote because I've just found it, is my teacher described me as like, Laura always likes to debate and challenge. And that was me as a child, as a young person. So it kind of started there. And I think as well, obviously you and we grew up in the time where there was no social media, no internet really. Like that only kicked in for, well, I mean, there was internet, but like we had like, Wikipedia.
We had dial up, mate, broadband. You had to plug it in
Dial
and
up,
take
you
your
know what I
phone
mean?
out, phone line out.
Yeah, exactly. So like we didn't have social media and all these things. We wasn't connected to like lots of entrepreneurial or inspiring people or people that looked like us or was like us. So as we understand different privileges, and I understand them now in my older age, like I remember thinking I want to be like a rich man. That's what I remember. And I used to think it's because I think money used to tie to freedom. And being truly transparent with you, I grew up in a very protective, loving, safe environment as a child, but very limited in our money mindset. So very often I would hear like, oh, we can't afford that or whatever else. And I think in this older part of my life, I've connected myself of kind of seeing a lot of like shame around money, or not feeling enough around money as a family. And again, my parents were incredible and they are incredible, but equally from the space of, I don't think they even realized that they were moving that energy. And as we understand, it's probably the energy they picked up when they were growing up. So it's just because that was life. And we are conditioned as humans to have fear around money, to believe that it kind of like holds us, and it is the thing that provides safety, I guess, for a lot of people. But I don't think that is really the case when we get to the certain level of obviously having our basic means looked after as people. But yeah, anyway, a little bit of a digression. So then you can imagine, then I move into performing. So I used to just love performing. I think I've just felt so free there on a stage and expressive, and to try on different roles, try on different characters. And I absolutely adored performing. I went to performing arts school in London, and then I actually spent a year in Canada. So I spent a year over there performing, and went over to Vegas, performed as a showgirl for a bit. And you know what? I think all of the time when I look back in reflection, it was always for this, probably the affirmation of the crowd, right? So it's like to be seen, to be like, to be famous. I think that was the thing when I was like younger. It was like that was how it was channeled, like wanting to be with the collective or make bigger things for the collective, just feeling like I was here for something more. I always had that as a child. I feel like humans would kind of layer that with arrogance a little, but it doesn't feel like that. There's just a knowing inside of you where you feel like you're here for something bigger. And I absolutely adored that. But then found in some really horrible environments where I think where I have got things like skinny privilege, white privilege, beauty privilege, I was valued a lot and given opportunities a lot in my 20s for those things. And equally, I worked hard, but I think you do have an awareness of how privileges go against you or work for you because it's your lived experience. And I think at that time, I was really sexualized and objectified, and I just tapped out, really. I tapped out and I come back to the UK because even though I could feel like as I was moving higher up the ladder, I was getting unhappier. And like I was on a Warner Brothers set, and like I could feel so much unhappiness around me, so much unhappiness, and so much I didn't understand it at the time, but basically just like eco-led and just led by power, led by money, which obviously is that industry anyway, a lot of our industries. And as much as obviously there was always a part of me that wanted more, wanted wealth, wanted all these big things, I just had this inner fire where I fought for injustice and I knew what was wrong or right. And so I just left that environment, come back to the UK, got a part-time job in a gym. And then I was like, don't know what I'm going to do next. Met a girl, and then we started a business together. And I always loved business because I think as well, for me, it kind of it just coexisted with that feeling of feeling free, which is so ironic because business can be hard going sometimes and you can feel the complete opposite. But I think again, it was what was right for me. It was kind of what connected to me. And we started that in 2015. We borrowed money. We we had a different kind of business model for property that isn't the normal letting and selling. But it's part of the letting kind of strand of property. And we built that over 5 years. And I was really proud of it. And I think what I lost along the way, and what kind of I got caught up in along the way, is that I kind of connected my worth to it. So I remember feeling, well, we hit 2019, my business partner got pregnant. I was kind of unhappy in the feeling, I think, that I can describe when you're in a relationship, when you feel you're not in love anymore, but you still love that person. It was like that feeling. So I was like, but equally where I'd put worth on it, it was like, well, who am I without this? Because like, this is the thing, isn't it? This is what social conditioning does when you don't hold your own worth, is that I would go to different places, different events, and people would go, oh my God, that's amazing. That's really good you've done that. Like, oh, that's, well, you built that part-time, because me and my business partner, we were still working other jobs as well. And it was like, it gives you like this form of validation. And then like you almost connecting it to your worth and all those things. So anyway, we then tried to sell the business. That was the plan. And along the way too, in 2018, I picked up a professional camera for the first time. Just because I think it was that I didn't understand it at the time, but it was like that creativity in me that was lost from a real transactional business. Because at the time we were like sitting on 60 different contracts in property, and it was pretty much primarily just me and my business partner running it. So it was very transactional. It was very demanding. It was like 7 days a week stuff with everything else I was doing. That's the way it was. I was in that real toxic masculine environment in myself and the business, to be fair. And then yeah, and I self-taught myself photography, moving back to that. And then I was really grateful within those couple of years, I got the chances to work with brands. I got the chances to work with amazing women. And I think that was my first connection, because it was the other side of production and from an industry I knew quite well, being younger, where I didn't feel that women were really seen, and I felt like they were fully objects and they were fully sexualized, and they were, they were there as like coat hangers to industries. And a lot, that moves in all of the industries of entertainment as such. It's getting better. We are evolving. There's a lot more that's happening now, but it was really like that. So I felt such a beautiful connection to be able to make sure women felt safe and seen. And I'm so intuitive and I can pick up on people's energy. So it's almost like somebody doesn't have to say anything and I could feel it. So I felt really, really connected. That's the first time I felt connected back to me more. In those environments when I would do shoots and like everything like that. So that was great. And then going back to the business, then had to learn how to sell a business. And then we got all the way to like the end of the solicitors kind of draw up, which was January 2020. And then COVID hit. And then the buyer pulled out. And then my business partner had a 6-week-old baby. We were locked in houses. We were managing people locked in their houses. And it was really hard going. And in a garden, summer 2020, we both sat together, me and my business partner, and was like, I'm done. She was done. And I just had this feeling where I needed to let go. And I just knew that the wealth that would come from selling and all those things would come to me in another way. And it was time to move on. And yeah, so obviously just ensuring everyone was all right in the business and everything was put back to, the spaces that it could be, like with the landlords, the tenants, all those things. We then ceased trading. And then from the investment I got out of the business, which was just cash in our balance sheet, I then invested in a mentor, which at the time I was like, I don't need to be taught business, but I need accountability, because of where I'd had that business partner. And the lady that I connected to is the lady I knew from the first business mentoring that I did with property from like 2014. So now we're at 2020. So it was just an incredible experience. And I think it's all divine timing and it's all synchronicity, because then what happened was she stripped me back. She gave me tools and she'd done that degree on me. So she was like, no, you're good at building business, but I don't know how much you believe that you are worthy. You are worthy. And that was me like working in things outside of me. So then when she stripped me back and was like, well, this is just what you do and this is who you are, it started to like, it was the most weirdest thing in the world. And it really is like the transition to truest self, which is why I teach it, because I'm so passionate about it, where all of a sudden we then just start to show up, and that is our exchange for energy and for money and for that fulfillment, as opposed to showing up to exchange our time for money, which is what I always thought I would have to do. And then with that, I would then get freedom. So I was like astonished, as you know, like you kind of moved through it with me as a best friend, watching it from the outside. So like, and it was insane. And I was just, and then I moved to Dubai for a couple of months and I was transitioning like photography with mentoring at the time. And then I think as my journey's gone on over the last 2 years, I've just really stripped more and more back, honoured the evolvement of truest self, and that's moved for me over the last 2 years, and honouring that, surrendering to that, and how things change. And I'm now in a space where I am moving towards my vision more, which is for women to exist in a world where there is no conversation or imbalance of power due to the effects of systemic oppression. So now this year for me is like grounding in and going, okay, cool, how can I really help in this space? Like, how can I reach more women? My mission is to reach 10 million women, to teach them how to be their truest self through business. So it's a very exciting time, and that is you up to date. So if you're still listening, thank you for joining. Thank you for the journey.
Well, I didn't want to stop you in the middle because I felt like you were in flow, and I mean, obviously, I
No,
know
I
all of
think
this.
more for your listeners. Do you know what
Yeah,
I
no,
mean? Yeah,
absolutely.
there
But
you
I feel
go.
like it's nice to like not stop you because you are in flow and it makes sense and everything has a timeline. It's all chronological, which is amazing. So, yeah, I mean, what's really incredible about both of us, obviously, is that we are a mirror of each other. So, a lot of the things that you obviously mentioned in your story is what I mentioned in mine. So if anyone listened to the first episode, which was about my life, there's just so many like synchronicities with our, like identifying our egos in like what we were doing in terms of work and overworking and like the need for validation from performing and like all of these things. And even down to the fact that you said that might have been seen as arrogant, but it's not. I literally use those words. It's so funny that like how you've not even heard that, but we still have that like connection. Like me and Laura have this intuitive connection, so we kind of like know when each other's going to ring or message or whatever. We kind of get that vibe, so it's so funny even now that she's not heard that episode and she's saying the same thing. It's just
Oh
amazing.
no, did you say
No,
it in
yeah,
it?
I'll say it in it. That's what's even
Oh,
more
I love
funny
that.
because you haven't heard it, so that just shows how much
No.
we are aligned, mate. Absolutely. And you know what else I thought was really nice that you highlighted was something that I have said a few times myself, is that you said it really blasé, but I want to pick up on it because it was like, because it's something that we just pass in common as us as people, and that it's like we only limit ourselves. And I feel like that's such an important part of like, the whole reason why I do this as well. It's like obviously society creates limitations and all of these things, but you can choose to adopt that limitation or you can dismantle it. And I feel like both of us have kind of done that for ourselves, in so many different ways, but especially, for you in business and your vision now going forward, like there's so much, that you want to dismantle to get rid of the limitations, and for yourself especially. And I think yeah, your life is obviously same as mine, had its ups and downs and been so colourful. And I think really, the question that I always ask at this point as well is like, what was the time in your life that you really felt like you gave yourself that permission to be like, no, I'm not doing that anymore. This is me, this is now, this is who I am, and this is, yeah, this is, I'm not taking that going forward. Like I'm creating my new narrative now. I give myself permission to be Laura Belcher fully.
You know what, Charisse? It's such a hard one because it's that when you said that, my first reaction was I've always given myself permission. That little girl was so she didn't listen to anyone. And my mum says that. She's like, we couldn't really hold you down. Like, as you know, my parents are more of the protective side. My mum's a nurse, very, very nurturing. But even I think in hindsight, like when I got into my teenager years and this stuff I've been unpacking recently, they couldn't, you know, I was that girl, like that just kind of kept giving myself permission. But to round back to you, I didn't feel safe in being myself until quite recently. So there was always this fire inside of me that would push that permission. Like I say, like, that moment where I was at Vancouver Film Festival and I was like, I'm done. This is it for me. What is this weird conversation? Why are you addressing me in this way? And all these
Mm.
other people think it's normal. Do you know what I mean? I had that fire to go, no, I had that internal radar and that strength to constantly like follow my own self. But I think I wasn't grounded. I was never really grounded in knowing who I was without feeling affected by outside sources and by having some influence. I think I think my mentoring when I went into my second business, I think that's when it shifted because it's like I heard it recently, you can't mark your own homework. Do you know what I mean? And I
Mm.
think this is a big thing as well. And and don't get me wrong, like I've invested lots of money in mentoring, like a house deposit that I would have loved to have got a house with. But it's because there is this sense of knowing that I do know that for me to do the things I want to do and for me to help women in the way that I want to help, one of my core values is development. How can I help women develop if I don't develop me? And if there's parts of me that feel triggered, or if there's parts of me that are feeling the imposter, or there's parts of me that are feeling these things, I need to work on it. And I think that's the thing. And I think I didn't realize that until I started just shifting my thoughts around business and success. And that was that back into 2020 when I was adopted, when I adopted my business mentor there. And she's so much more than a business mentor. Like, she's incredible. And yeah, and she helped me personally. So it's like that was the first time I think that I'd had somebody marking my homework as such on me personally. And I was like, wow, okay, I do struggle with that. I do struggle with control there. And I do struggle with perfectionism. And where does that come from? And what does that mean? And, and I think when I could strip all those layers back, as we always like speak of it, and in the beautiful words of Brene Brown, it's like stripping back the armor. It's like, because then that, because I could always win. I had no doubt. I was like, I'll always win. Fight me, or like, and I don't mean that physically because I'm not a physical fighter, as you know, but I meant that like in life. I was like, nothing, would ever phase me. And that's really funny too, because there was a lot of times like that musical theatre school I didn't get into. We have 4 auditions, we have 4 rounds, and like it was quite a, it's conservatoire, it's quite a well-known school in London. And I called up the headmaster. I called up the principal and I was like, see me again. And he was like, no, we didn't accept you. And I was like, please see me again. Like, I had bronchitis. And he was like, if you can get a doctor's note. And I remember him saying at my audition, he was like, we've let you in because of your like tenacity, like, and that drive. And then, the first year of Canada, I was refused a visa. And then I got it the second time I tried. Like, so I think I've always had that, but being like my more balanced, trusting, truest self didn't come until like the end of 2020, and that was when I was ready to face myself, I think.
Yeah, no, that was really lovely, mate. And I think it's so spot on, really, because I think again, we have such similarities in that. And I think it's almost like the you before was so ego led and driven and like masculine energy, whereas the you that has full permission is the feminine you that is balanced, so it's almost like when you connect to that inner and the being, that's the real permission, isn't it? Is when you do take the armor off, and like I talk about that all the time, and you sit in that, again, the vulnerability, and you're asking yourself, who am I and what is it I want to do? And that's how the mentoring came about for you, really, wasn't it? And I guess having that stillness as well with Rebecca opened that access to you, like my mentor's Rebecca and Laura's mentor was Rebecca as well, but they're different people, by the way, just in case, because I had Rebecca on the last episode, in case anyone's wondering, oh, okay, there's the connection. No, it's not the same one. But it is incredible. And I think I feel like as well, when we're in that toxic masculine energy, we don't ask for help. We think we can figure it out on our own. And especially us two, we were gunning forward, all guns blazing. If someone even offered us a hand, we're like, I don't need it. I don't need your help. Whereas now, I think the real it's like permission to be vulnerable. It's permission to be helped and to be guided. And we aren't meant to figure everything out on our own. Otherwise, we wouldn't be community or tribal people. That's how humans are developed, aren't they? Like animals, we run in packs. Like, we're not supposed to live on our own.
Absolutely. And I think our social conditions as well. And when we like take it back, so this is what I'm really passionate about, is unpacking almost the generation before us and like this understanding where business comes from, because I think this is the thing, we all go autopilot, like you say, and we kind of feel like, okay, well, that was a thing built by the patriarchy. Men built that. Business was built by men, so let's mirror them, let's do what they're doing.
Yeah.
And as you say, that's a very like they are struggling in their own system, from the system they built that's now working against them, because they can't access emotion as easily, or feel that vulnerability, as you say. And like all of those things in the feminine aren't valid as much. Building my property business, we wouldn't go into a meeting and go, how does everyone feel? We would go, what was everyone thinking, what we're going to do? Or like, if you stack up a business deal and everything's there and everything makes sense, but you just feel that it's wrong, they're still not real. Like, that's not really glamorized as much as the latter. And this is, I truly believe, where we go wrong, because it's like, normally when we're working from that space, we're actually in a place of lack, because if we're feared not to turn something down, we're probably leading with the wrong intention, which it'll be like to get the deal, which will be to get money. It's often what I see with businesses too, and the way that I help women is that I only ever work with businesses that are being led from somebody's truest self, and I can suss it out very quickly. or I help women start that for themselves and figure it out and help them navigate what that looks like for them. But the biggest thing I see is people started from their truest self. They started from this passion, and they kind of get a year in or 2 years, and then they go into that fear factor because the business starts running them. And they're like, oh God, now we've got things to pay. Now we've got people to pay. Now we've got something to live up to. There's an expectation. And they start to dull that femininity, and they start to lead by the masculine more because it feels safer. And obviously we're all wired for safety. But this is the strength and the groundedness of great business, is that you really need to know where you're going. You need to know exactly, like I always explain it, it's like the messaging is everything. It's the foundation of the house. You would never feel safe in a house if the foundation wasn't strong.
No, absolutely that, mate. And I think, you did hit the nail on the head with like men in rooms where they can't say that, oh, I lead with my feelings or whatever. And this is why, we have so many, like the highest rate of suicide is from men, because then their feelings are oppressed. I'm sure, whoever's listening, if you're male or female, I'm sure you can identify that, like talking about emotions is so taboo. And I think we're trying to bridge a gap here, in our own ways, like both me and you, about, vulnerability and, being your truest self and accepting that fully. And I think sometimes it's like being brave enough to just say how you feel, regardless of the impact it's going to have. Like sometimes you do need to just open that up and just make space, because, vulnerability is, well, any action and any emotion mirrors back another emotion. So if you lead with vulnerability, you'll get it back in return. And I think sometimes that's the bravery that's needed, in a lot of spaces, so I think for you,
It's
like
so
with
true that. It's
yeah,
very true that, isn't it? And it's always that, and it's really like a beautiful full circle, because it is that permission. You almost give somebody permission to be themselves when
that's
you
it,
do that,
exactly
because
that.
it's like, it is, as we know, like everything holds energy. Everything we do has energy behind it. So it's like we're such incredible beings. So it's like when we be and we feel and we like connect, we like understand more, we can sense more, we're more powerful. And
100%.
of course we need all those human tools, and we need all of that because we live in a human existence. But I definitely see it in business that we are still in a space where we're in a lot of kind of backlash, especially for women, from where this all began. Like I say it a lot in my socials, but I think people are shocked when I say it, that in the 70s in the UK, women couldn't actually get funding or a mortgage alone without a signature. They couldn't. They would be refused. So it wasn't safe alone. We didn't feel supported. We didn't feel enough. We didn't feel those things. So this is why we're only one generation removed from that, which is why we often kind of play it small, or we feel like we're not qualified enough, or are we quite qualified yet to start this course or start this product line business? Or, like I remember having a discovery call with a client that has built a 7-figure product company and felt intimidation by going to Europe to sell to them. And I was like, are you mad? They're inviting you in because you've already done the work. But this is the feeling. And it's like, this is again, like, as you say, circling back round, it's we only limit ourselves. And this is why it's like I'm always challenging myself. Okay, we say these things, Charisse, but how can we help women get through it? How can we help them be brave? How can we help them, truly believe in that thing? And I think my biggest thing at the moment that I'm really working on in the background and putting together more stuff on is it's like understanding that why. So it's like when we understand the why of why we might feel like those things and how we are so close to it in history, generations, and all those things, the shame starts to dissolve a bit more.
Absolutely.
We understand. So do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
We know that it's not us. We're not personally kind of connected to it. We're like, oh, okay, cool. This is a gender problem. And we understand where this comes from. And actually, maybe we don't need to do it how it's already been done. Actually, we're going to look at what they did, and now we're going to do it our new way. And maybe you don't have to work 7 days a week. And maybe actually there is balance. And maybe actually it's still going to be successful and it's still going to work. It just needs to look slightly different, because actually, are we mimicking the greatest leaders if the highest suicide rate for men and the highest rate of death is suicide?
Absolutely that, mate. And I think it's like you said, awareness and like knowledge is power, so when you know that whether it works or not, it's like, do you want to adopt that mannerism? And equally, like I think when you said about how do we do that, I think it takes female leaders to lead by example, because when you see more people
Yes.
doing that representation, which is one of my core values, for me, I never saw brown women in business, and the only woman I saw that when I was younger doing it was Oprah, and now there's obviously so many more people doing it, which is beautiful. And I think even down to, like manifestation is a string of my bow. And more people are talking about it now because, for me, manifestation is a byproduct of self-worth, which is all about what I build, like we dismantle our limiting beliefs so we can build on a foundation of self-worth and self-awareness to get to our point of self-love and authentic confidence and empowerment. So then as a byproduct of feeling those, embodied knowing of deservingness, you then attract the things that you want, which is manifestation. And I think more people are speaking about this part now. And I think, some of the gritty stuff is obviously being missed out of that, which is the part that I fill in. But I think, yeah, it's just creating that awareness, that representation for people to just feel more seen and heard, because ultimately that's what we need, isn't it, as humans.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And you're so right. That is it. Humans learn by observation, don't they? Which is why we've kind of learned the wrong way as such. Business has been, it's not even wrong. Business has evolved because of men. So that's a great thing. It creates an economical like cycle for something to be a thing. But equally, it's now our time to really take back our power. And give ourselves permission to be great leaders, hey,
That's
as our
it.
truest selves.
Exactly that, 100%, mate. No, all of that stuff, which I love. So in your life as a human, not as a mentor, well, as a mentor as well, do you say that I mean, I feel like knowing you, that obviously that I know some, but I feel like, is there anything you want to share with your viewers? Oh, that just completely went over. I was like, whoa, what's happened there? Is there anything you want to share with the viewers about obstacles that are recurring that you face in your life and how you are dealing with them? So just like, is there anything that as you level up through your journey, is there like one thing that keeps coming back that you're like, you know what? Because as I always say, like healing isn't linear, it's circular. So is there anything that you think, okay,
Yeah.
yeah, do you know what? I can identify that that's something that, and I know you've touched on it briefly, but I feel like if there's anything in particular, because I feel like we need to, as humans, we like to hear that, you're thriving, right? But equally, it's nice to know that, there are things that you're still working through and all of
Oh
that.
God, I think, like me and Cherise speak about it a lot, but I think every time you get a breakthrough, it's also like you're unpacking a wound that is a wound, like trauma. We are all traumatized. I think this is another thing as well, because we've lived a human life. So, like we have to honor that. And I think when you undo a wound, it is then a wound. Do you know what I mean? And like you can heal it up, but it's a scab, it's a scar, it's still there. So um like what we always say together, like you get this breakthrough, but equally, you're never fully healed, because then, as you say, as you're up leveling, things will trigger it again, because it's like it's a bigger river. So yeah, absolutely, mate. I get stuff all the time, like Jesus, every day. But I think, and I think a lot of it is probably, I think the main core thing is just fear. I think and I think that's why I'm so passionate about supporting other women, because where I am in my journey, I truly believe this. And then there's things that have come to me that I'm working on, like a book that I will be working on. But I know that there's parts that have come to me in the book, but I need to truly be really strong at it in my being and where I am at in my business and who I am, to be teaching it and to like really write on it brilliantly. And I think that's the thing. I think um yeah, I think the fear of kind of all the things that make you happy in your life or give you fulfillment could go. I think that's a big thing that comes back round for me. But yeah, lots of stuff around fear. And I think that is because I've had to do a lot of work in my root chakras, as you know, like I'm very open in my sacral, which is why I feel well. I'm so intuitive. Like I've learned how to harness that so I can move my clients in ways as well that they can't even see, that can help them. But equally, as we know, like our superpower is also like our Achilles heel. So sometimes I feel very overwhelmed with emotion, and and I have to really ground. I have to really, and even though there's a part of me, that fire inside of me that moves me to like go to like this next direction. Like for instance, this has been a massive transition for me going in my business at the minute. I'm really kind of taking a bit of a new direction, and it's because there is an inner knowing that I need to be braver in the topics I talk on, and I need to kind of bring more of my past to the forefront as opposed to just business stuff. And it is because I know that that's how that's going to help women feel that they can be those leaders that we discuss, so I know that it's all part of my mission. But equally then I have to, like, I'm still Laura Belcher, do you know what I mean? And I'm still that small girl that like was like had the fire to do these things, but she's still a human and she feels so deeply. Like I'm such an empath, I feel so deeply, so it's like I really have to constantly ground and do those things. But yeah, if you feel moments of lack or fear, the only way I can describe that I move through it and allow it to kind of happen, well, because it does happen, it's just moving on the tools that I've had before. That's why I've got a whiteboard in front of me with quotes on it. I've wrote them for myself because they're the things I learned last year. But when things come back around to challenge you again, the emotion kicks in, so you can't ground, you can't think rationally. You're like, oh shit, oh god, okay. And sometimes we get tested even higher at different levels, so you just have to really take that moment to pause. I kind of pull in all my tools, all my methods, ground back in, do what's right for me, read my stuff and get back on it like that. And I think, again, this is why truest self, this is why a degree for you will be anything else that will ever kind of like give you more information in your life. The last 6 months, I didn't mean to do it on purpose, but I've kind of stopped listening to any other podcast and so on. And not because, and I still listen to stuff or read books, but it was like I spent a lot of time reading podcasts or books of people that were kind of in my industry. But really what I knew is that, again, it's not from a place of arrogance, but it's from a place of like, what I need to bring to the world has probably not been done yet because it's inside of me. And I want other women to trust that there's something inside of them. Do you know what I mean? So it's like, and my mentor really encouraged me to understand that. And it's taken me courage to get to that bit. And I think that is like every time you swim a new river, you find new things on the way.
Yeah, absolutely, mate. No, thank you for sharing that. And I guess almost that's like an element of your healing journey, like what you just shared there, which was just really lovely. And I think so many women listening will really resonate with the emotions, like overcome with emotions and like learning how to ground. And, both of us talk about tools and we all each have our way that we help people find the tools. And that's the coping mechanisms, isn't it? The way that we navigate our way out the darkness each time. And, it is that, again, that circle that I said about the healing and all of that stuff. So it's so spot on, mate. And I think, yeah, hopefully that really helps people, because I think what I always say as well is that we spend our whole life, and you mentioned this, is like looking outwardly for answers when they're always inside of us. And I think that is the core, isn't it? Is that, it's lovely to like gain information and insight from outside sources. Absolutely. But if you find that you're taking other people's opinions instead of listening to yourself and what you want to do, you end up falling into people pleasing, self-sabotage, and it goes down a spiral. So it's almost being like vulnerable, but also brave enough to like listen to your own inner voice, because it always knows. And your gut tells you, your intuition tells you if something's not right or wrong for you. So I think at the core of it, it's almost like, yeah, listen to your inner being, because again, that's your truest self that wants the best for you. And I think, yeah, that really is it, isn't it, more than anything?
Absolutely.
But yeah, like all of what you've said as well really does embed into your business and how you take your clients through their journey. And it is all about connecting to their true self, to their why, and all of this lovely stuff which you've shared, which is so nice. And I think I've seen your journey develop as well as a mentor through your own growth, which is, like I said at the beginning, it's like that's a really beautiful thing about what you're doing, is that you are not just teaching people to do something, you're leading through example. And I think that's just a really amazing thing about where you're at, mate. So I think, to round off, what are your top tips for whoever's listening to lock into their authentic self, their truest self, to give themselves permission? What would be your, like, if they wanted to start today, what could they do in your words?
I think the first thing is understanding that if there isn't something that feels right in their life, it's not going to feel easy to change. You have to surrender that it will feel uncomfortable. That's that. But on the other side of it, you will feel so much freer and fulfilled. I feel like if you're trying to find your truest self, trying to find your purpose, I think a great thing to do is have an awareness through your week. So if you're in a job you don't like, if you're in a business that's not serving you, try to be really aware, like almost like see, come out of yourself and like look into yourself and like be aware of your week. Like jot down like the things that like each day that really, really like made you fulfilled. So it could be like when I helped that person with that task. And be aware of your communication. What is it? Did you like to sit and analyze information? Do you like to build? Do you like to support? Like be aware of those things because that will help you find your gifts. And don't feel like you need to Google, like nothing is outside of you. Like if you start to do that thing of like trying to find a purpose, you're literally going to get further and further away from it. Like our purpose, our true self is us. So it's like, would they have ever taught my job like at school? No, because it wasn't a job, it wasn't a thing. Like I watched a TikTok yesterday and there's this beautiful dog school. Oh, it just made me laugh. Oh, I loved it so much. It was like a dog bus, and the dog bus stopped at all these stops and the dogs got on and they sat next to each other and stuff, and everyone was like, oh my god, like why couldn't I like sign up to that job of driving the bus? Do you know what I mean? Like I think what you have to truly understand is there is a million ways to make money in this world, but the only way that's going to set you free, that it will not harness you, it will not take away your power, is if it's you trusting in yourself, your gifts and who you are. And know that it won't come overnight. It just takes time, it takes work. So if you haven't got resources to invest in a mentor, do stuff like that. And if you do want to invest in a mentor, really understand that not every mentor is right for you and you won't be right for every mentor. So really go with your gut feeling. Like don't lead with the expectation. Don't lead with like, oh, but they've made so much money or they've made this or whatever. Lead with like your feelings. I would say personally, lead with like, how you connect to what they're doing and their values. I think that's a really big thing, get clear on what your values are, and how you want to navigate through the world like that, because all of this will help you trust in yourself. And that's it. That's alchemy of life, I believe. Because when you trust in yourself, you're always going to navigate things into spaces that don't really take you into darkness for too long. Because you trust in you. You trust that you're enough. You trust that you're worthy, that you're loved, and that you can keep moving forward with everything that you do. And it will always come, even if you have to leave something behind and it feels hard.
Yeah, absolutely, mate. That was so lovely. And I think, yeah, I'm sure that'll resonate with so many people. And I think as well, like, a lot of that as well ties into the work that I do. So, if you are lost in your self-worth and like building that self-trust, it is about, you know, um, there's a lot to dismantle there and it's okay. And I think you have to go inwards to come outwards. It's like, it's like a full cycle, isn't it? Like we have to truly understand who we are on an internal level and then rebuild from a place of really, like you said about the foundations, it's like rebuilding our foundations on this self-worth and self-understanding to be our truest selves. And it's being kind to yourself as well, like you said, like being intentional, being intuitive, it's all of these things, but just don't shame yourself in this journey, because as we know, we've both been through our own versions of it. It does get hard at times, but the other side of it is so worth it. Like I always say, it's an uphill climb, but the view from the top is always worth it. And I think for me, the consistency is looking back down at where I came from and feeling and knowing that I don't want to be that version of myself anymore. And that version of myself didn't have all the things that I want or that I have. So, am I going to keep going up? I might rest here for a while or I might keep climbing, but you can do that when you
Yeah.
get to that space, right?
100%. I think as well, literally off the back of what you just said there, I feel like that's where we find gratitude too, and we find that courage, when we go into, so looping back around to like, if I feel lack or worry or fear, That's another thing, you know, I'll stand still for a second. Like I literally, when I arrived in Australia, like I moved here 5 months ago. When I arrived here, I wrote a letter to myself about what happens in the next 2 years. It was a 30-page letter. But I did it because when I read it, I was like, oh my God, we've had the best 2 years. But you know, I think as human beings, we're wired to, you know, lead with ego to protect us, and we're like fear-based humans. Uh, we just forget. We're just so like, you know, moving towards what's next, how do we like make ourselves safe next, like what money do we need, what do we need, what next thing do we need, how are we going to do that next, like, you know, oh, I've committed to that, how am I going to make that work? Like we, as you say, we don't give ourselves permission to like be kind to ourselves. And I think another thing as well, sometimes where you get triggered or sometimes where lack can come in, this is another great method. I'll just share what you were saying there because your listeners might resonate to it. But sometimes we just have to get silent, figure out why it's worrying us, like really kind of like dive deep into like where that comes from. If it's like one thing, um, like if I don't hit the target this month for this, or if this doesn't come, there'll be a reason why that's triggering you. There'll be something that's happened in the past where that did happen, or you're really close to it, or your relationship with that one thing. And sometimes I just have to go back and remind different versions of me that we've got this now because we've got new tools.
Absolutely. a
I
hundred
think that's the
percent.
biggest thing, even in relationships and friendships. You know, like I really like struggled to speak my truth for a long time because I was so emotionally led and I was so, and that's, you know, that's a bit complex too. That's because, you know, as we know, like that's it, isn't it? Like as we're going on our self-discovery journey, it's like to do with everything, our curriculum, our upbringing, like everything we've ever experienced. But the more and more I get used to like diving into that as opposed to backing away from that, often it's just forgiveness of
Mm,
that part of you just didn't know how to navigate it then, and it's okay, and we can let it go now, and we're just like moving into this next space, and we've got it now. And if it does feel frightening or scary, we're also in a space where we know how to call on the support that we need, or like take time. We have little, do you know what I mean, like pausing. Jesus, nobody pauses enough. Like that's the biggest thing I've learned in business.
absolutely.
And great things come when we pause, which is the most ironic thing. We're not being taught that. We
I
just think,
completely
well,
agree.
if we're in fear or lack, we just need to work harder or work stronger or work more. But it's just normally the complete opposite. But it's a very hard, it takes time for somebody to rewire that in their body and in their brain, especially in business. But it definitely can be done.
Absolutely that, and in life, so much so, and there's so much connection to both of that. And I think, yeah, everything you've said there is obviously things that I've had to do always as well. And a lot of the time it comes down for me, it's fear of failure, more than anything. It's like, and validation. And I think, even now to this day, I'm still getting that. And like my mentor says, another level, another devil. And it really is that, every time you ascend, like I say, another elevation, another manifestation, but also on that level is another devil. So it's like there's more that you have to overcome every time. But that's the beauty of life, isn't it? It is up and down, it ebbs and flows and all this beautiful stuff. But as long as you stay dedicated to being your truest self and leading with that authenticity, what's meant for you will always find you, and you'll always get to where you're supposed to be, because your heart and your intuition is your compass, isn't it? And that's,
Absolutely.
you feel your way through, as we said, and it's that being, you are it, you are the thing. You don't have to act too crazy. The being will align the action when it's right. And I think that's the beauty of pausing, and I found that, my time was the pandemic, and I think equally yours as well, like we found that flow and that true essence of ourselves in that space. But yeah, to finish off, mate, I always have this soul to soul little segment, and I feel like it's just kind of almost like maybe a little bit of a channeled message, or just something that you feel like someone listening would benefit from. And I know you've definitely given some gold dust there, but just anything you want to kind of end with that's just like something from your heart space, like anything you kind of just want to share.
I just think I wish humans knew how powerful they were and to stop listening to what is meant to be their pathway in life by everything around them.
Mm,
Like that is the matrix you're born into. but that is a system that was built here by power and by ego. That's not your system. It's not your system. Like you need to be really brave to follow your heart and your intuition, and it will always guide you to where you're meant to be.
Absolutely, mate. No, thank you so much. And yeah, I hope that yeah, those listening found some real value in everything you said, because it is so needed, mate. And I think yeah, just so much connection in the conversation, I think, you know, in our journeys in our life, as we know. And I think hopefully that resonates so deeply as well with our listeners. So if anyone wants to find you, be mentored by you, join your program, anything that you have going on, events, things like that, where can they find you?
Well, first of all, thank you for all your beautiful, kind words. This is such a beautiful pleasure, and it's definitely a long time coming. So yeah, I really hope that your listeners are connected, and I mean, I hope that they're here listening to all of your episodes, because I know how valuable they'll be. But yeah, you can find me on most social media platforms. My website is www.laurabelcher.com. And my handle on Instagram is Laura_Belcher_, and it's the same on TikTok. So in terms of the value, in terms of content and trying to give resources and resonate to a community and build that space, I'm always present on social media for those reasons. And yeah, and I will be looking to do a speech. I don't know, is that what you call it? A speak or a speech or
I'd say a talk. I would say a talk, but then I
a
don't know. You're
talk, yeah,
Oz
that's
now,
why
might
I
be
couldn't
different.
find the words. So yeah, I am looking to do a talk as well at the end of April time in Sydney, which I'm really excited to do, because again, this is me going out of like into a new river, because it's going to be more focused around, like I say, it's kind of like us understanding our history, our why of why we struggle to do the things that we do, as opposed to kind of tackling one thing at a time in business, like imposter syndrome or perfectionism or the fear of showing up or the fear of failure. Like I want to, yeah, the talk will be more around like unpacking us understanding in systemic oppression why we have that, and then how it will unleash us and how it will unlock us into business. Yeah,
Amazing.
sorry, I think I said, but yeah, that'll be in Sydney. But all of that will be on my socials, my website. So if you're connected to me there, I would love to see you, love to have a conversation. And yeah, and then hopefully in time, I think I'll bring that back to London as well.
Yeah, exciting, mate. Oh, well, it was lovely to have you. And yeah, as I said, I hope everyone gained like at least some wisdom there, at least gave you food for thought, you know, to be intentional and to be intuitive, you know, connect to that and embrace yourself fully, because yeah, you deserve to live your life out of the truest version of yourself. And you know, this is all hopefully giving you the permission to shine. So thank you, Laura, for coming. And yeah, thank you everyone for listening. And Laura's details will be in the description. But have a wonderful day, and I will speak to you soon. Permission to Shine with Sharice Bisram, self-love and empowerment mentor and facilitator. To work with me, head to my website or my social media platforms. I offer sessions such as workshops in schools and workplaces. I deliver talks, and I also have programs available, and I'm available for one-to-one sessions on a 6-month, 3-month and 6-week basis. My work is all about taking you through the journey of self-discovery all the way to true, authentic confidence and empowerment, unlearning and dismantling all of your limiting beliefs, getting to the root of who you are inside and building you up on a foundation of self-worth, self-acceptance, self-awareness and deep self-love. You are the only you there is, and that is your superpower.